Hi guys. Okay, so I wish I had more answers. I know I said yesterday I would hopefully have some coming back today. All I know right now is that we are going to a distance learning type thing. We won't be going back to school this year. So I'll let you know as soon as Mrs. Owens or Mr. Armstrong has given us more information. But right now, that's all I know. So I know that's not great, and I know that's not what any of us wanted, but we're going to keep trucking along and doing what we need to do. So we'll put all of that aside, and let's read we read 3 yesterday. Chapter 3 was yesterday. So we're going to read chapters 4 and chapter 5 today. And let's do something fun tomorrow. So when you are listening tomorrow, why don't we listen tomorrow on our couches, in a blanket, and just relaxing on our couch? And then the next day we can do another fun way. We'll try to move around our houses or get outside or listen in fun places. Okay, so tomorrow I'll see you on my couch, not at my kitchen table. Okay, so chapter 4. Well, let's think back to chapter 3. So when we read yesterday, Marty has now decided that he needs to find a way that he can get Shiloh from Judd. And the only way that he could think was that he needed to buy Shiloh from him. And he's like, how am I going to come up with all this money that I would need in such a short amount of time? And, my family doesn't have a lot of money. My parents aren't just going to give it to me. And Judd may not even take the money and give him Shiloh. He may say, no, I'm not giving you my dog. So his dad told him he could pick up cans and bottles and then take them and recycle them, and then they give money for them. But Marty knows that he's not going to get a lot of money for that. And so his dad takes him along on his mail route to pass out the Sears catalogs. And but Marty knows that he's not going to get paid for that. The most he will get would be a drink at the gas station and maybe a snack. But he goes along anyway because he likes to hang out with his dad and go along on his routes. So they come across the road and get to Judd's house. And all the dogs are barking, and he cannot see Shiloh. He has no idea where Shiloh is. And long story short, Judd tells him that he has him pretty much locked up in the back barn. And he's keeping him away from the other dogs. And he said that he hasn't been running away because he didn't feed him dinner that night that he came home, and he put him where he could see all the other dogs eat. And so Judd is pretty much admitting that he's not being very nice to Shiloh. And so Marty asked him what the dog's name is, and he said, well, I don't name my dogs. They're just dog 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And so Marty says, no, his name's Shiloh. And that is where the chapter ended. It's his dad driving off. So this is where chapter 4 picks up, and we'll read chapter 4 and chapter 5. Okay, so chapter 4. Marty, Dad says when we're around the bin, sometimes you haven't got the sense to shut up. You can't go telling a man what to call his dog. But I'm mad, too. Better than calling him Git or Scram. Judd Travers has the right to name his dog anything he likes or nothing at all. And you've got to get it through your head that it's his dog and not yours, and put your mind to other things. The Jeep bounces along for a good long mile before I speak again. I can't, Dad, I say finally, and this time his voice is gentle. Well, son, you got to try. I eat my peanut butter and soda cracker sandwiches with Dad at noon, plus the zucchini bread Mrs. Ellison had left in her mailbox for him. And after all the Sears catalogs and mail is delivered, we head back to the Sistersville post office. I get my Coca-Cola at the gas station while Dad finishes up, and we start home. I forget all about looking for cans and bottles. The can I'm holding is the only one I've got. Judd Travers goes hunting near every weekend, don't he? I asked Dad. Well, I suppose he does. And you can shoot just about anything that moves. Of course not. You can only shoot at what's in season. I'm thinking, how? About a year ago, I was fooling around up on the ridge and came across a dead dog, a dead beagle, with a hole. Never said anything because what was there to say? Somebody out hunting got a dog by mistake. I figured it happens. But the more I think on it now, I wonder if it wasn't Judd Travers shooting a dog on purpose, shooting one of his own dogs that didn't please him. Dad's still talking. Well, we've got a new game warden in the county, and I hear he's plenty tough. Used to be a man could kill a deer on his own property any time if that deer was eaten in his garden. Well, the warden would look the other way. But they tell me the new warden will find you good. Well, that's the way it ought to be, I guess. Well, what if a man shoots a dog? I ask. Dad looks over at me. Dogs aren't ever in season, Marty. Now you know that. But what if a man shoots one anyway? Well, that would be up to the sheriff to decide what to do, I guess. The next day I start early and set out on the main road to Friendly with a plastic bag. Get me 11 aluminum cans, and that's all. Could walk my legs off for a year and not even have enough to buy half a dog. The questions I tried not to think about came back to me now. Would Judd Travers want to sell Shiloh at all? And how much would he want for him if he did? And even if I got Shiloh for my very own, how was I supposed to feed him? There aren't many leftover scraps of anything in our house. Every extra bite of pork chop or boiled potato or spoonful of peas gets made into soup. If we hadn't had enough money for me to have a dog and buy its food and pay the vet and everything, I would have one by now. Dara Lynn's been begging for a cat for over a year. It isn't that we're rock poor. Trouble is that Grandma Preston's got real feeble and she's been cared for by Dad's sister over in Clarksburg. Have to have nurses anytime Aunt Hattie goes out, and every spare penny we got goes to pay for Grandma's care. Nothing left over to feed a dog, but I figure to get to that problem later on. I wonder if maybe, in time, if I never see Shiloh again, I'll forget about him. But then I'm laying on my couch that night after everyone else has gone to bed, and I hear this far-off sound again, like a dog crying. Not barking, not howling, not whining even. Crying, and I get this awful ache in my chest. I wonder if it is a dog. I wonder if it's Shiloh. I know you want a dog, Marty, Ma says to me on Thursday. She's sitting at the kitchen table with cardboard boxes all around her, folding a stack of letters and putting them in envelopes. Ma gets work to do here at home anytime she can. Well, I wish we had the money so every one of you kids could have a pet, but with Grandma seeming to need more care, we just don't, and that's that. I nod. Ma knows me better than I know myself sometimes, but she don't have this straight. I don't want just any dog. I want Shiloh, because he needs me. He needs me bad. It's Friday morning when I hear the sound. Dad's off on his mail route. Dara Lynn and Becky's watching cartoons on TV. Ma's out on the back porch washing clothes in the old washing machine that don't work. Only the wringer part works if you turn it by hand. I'm sitting at the table eating a piece of bread spread with lard and jam when I hear the noise. And I know it is Shiloh. Only the softest kind of noise, and right close. I fold the bread up, jelly to the inside, stick it in my pocket, and go out to the front door. Shiloh's under the sycamore tree, head on his paws, just like the day he followed me home in the rain. Soon as I see him, I know two things. 1, Judd Travers taking his dogs out hunting like he said, and 2, Shiloh's run away from the pack, and I'm not going to take him back. Not now, not ever. I don't have time to think how I had promised Judd if I ever saw Shiloh loose again, I'd bring him back. I don't even think what I'm going to tell Dad. All I know right then is that I have to get Shiloh away from the house, where none of the family will see him. I run barefoot down the front steps and over to where Shiloh's laying, his tail just thumping like crazy in the grass. Shiloh, I whisper, and gather him up in my arms. His body is shaking all over, but he don't try to get away. He don't creep off from me the way he did that first day. I hold him as close and as careful as I carry Becky when she's asleep, and I start off up the far hill into the woods carrying my dog. I know that if I was to see Judd Travers that very minute with his rifle, I'd tell him he'd have to shoot me before I'd ever let him near Shiloh again. There are burrs and stickers on the path up the hill, and usually I wouldn't take it without my sneakers, but if there's burrs and stickers in my feet, I hardly feel them. I know Judd Travers and his hounds won't be over here because this hill belongs to my dad. Get me as far as the shad bush next to the pine, and then I sit down and I hug Shiloh. First time I really have him to myself. First time I can hug him. Nobody's looking, and I just squeeze his thin body, and I pat his head, and I stroke his ears. Shiloh, I tell him as though he knows it's his name, Judd Travers isn't never going to kick you again. And the way his eyes look at me then, the way he reaches up and licks my face, It's like it seals the promise. I made a promise to Judd Travers I wasn't going to keep. Oh, help me. But I'm making one to Shiloh that I will. God strike me dead. I set him down at last and go over to the creek for a drink of water. Shiloh follows along beside me. I cup my hands and I drink, and Shiloh helps himself, lapping it up. Now what? I ask myself. The problem is looking me square in the face. I gotta keep Shiloh a secret. That much I know. But I'm not gonna keep him chained. The only thing I can think of is to make him a pin. Well, I don't like the idea of it, but I'll be with him as much as I can. I take him back to the shad bush, and Shiloh lays down. Shiloh, I say, patting his head. Stay. He thumps his tail. I start to walk away, looking back, and Shiloh gets up. Stay, I say again, louder, and point to the ground. He lays back down, but I know he's likely to follow anyway, so I pull him over to a pine tree. I take the belt off my jeans. I loop it through the raggedy old collar Shiloh's wearing, and I fasten the belt to the tree. Shiloh don't like it much, but he's quiet. I go down the path, and every so often I turn around. Shiloh is looking at me like he won't never see me again, but he doesn't bark. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen in a dog, to be that still. Ma's still on the back porch where she washes, and it takes her nearly all day. Darylyn and Becky stuck to the TV. So I go to the shed by the side of the house, and I take the extra fencing Dad used when we had us more chickens. I take me a piece of wire, too, and I go back up the hill. Shiloh's still there, and he doesn't try to get up when I set to work. I string the fencing around the trunks of the small trees for corner posts, and then take back to the pine tree again, where I fasten it with wire. The pen measures about 6 by 8 feet. I go back down to the shed again, and this time I get the old rotten planks Dad took out of the back steps when he put in the new ones. I pick me up an old pie tin, too. I take the planks up to Shiloh's pen and make him a lean-to at one end to protect him from the rain. I fill the pie tin with water so he'll have something to drink. Last of all, I take the lard bread from my pocket and I feed it to Shiloh in little pieces, letting him lick my fingers after every bite. I wrap my arms around him, I pat him, and I run my hands over his ears, and even kiss his nose. I tell him about 1,000,000 times that I love him as much as I love Mama. The worry part is whether or not he'll stay quiet. I'm hoping he will, because he was a silent dog to begin with. But all the way back down the hill to the house, I put my finger to my lips and I turn back. Shh, I say. Shiloh, he don't make a sound, like he had the bark beat out of him when he was a pup and it just never came back. I'm tense as a cricket that night. Tense when Dad drives up in his Jeep, afraid the dog will bark. Tense when Darylyn and Becky are out in the yard playing after dinner, squealing and yelling, and afraid that Shiloh will want to get in on the fun and maybe dig a hole out under the fence. But he never comes. I manage to take a piece of potato and some cornbread up to him before it gets dark. I sit down in his pen with him, and he crawls all over to me, licking my face. If he'd have been a cat, he would have purred. He was that glad to see me. Tell him I'm coming back tomorrow with some kind of leash for him. Tell him we're going to run all over the hill, him and me, every day. I tell him he's my dog now and I'm never going to let anybody hurt him again, ever. And then I leave, wiring the fence real good. I go home and I sleep a full night, the first time in a long while. Chapter 5. I got to take one problem at a time, I tell myself. Problem number 1, where to keep Shiloh hid. Solved. Problem number 2, would Shiloh be quiet? Yes, he would. Solved. Problem number 3, how am I going to get food out of the house enough to feed Shiloh twice a day without Ma noticing? The next morning before breakfast, as soon as Dad's gone, I take a biscuit from the kitchen and a rope from the shed outside and run up the far hill before Ma and Darylyn and Becky get out of bed. This time Shiloh's on his feet waiting for me, tail going like a windshield wiper, fast speed. A soft yip of pure joy cuts off quick when I say, shh. But as soon as I'm in the pen, Shiloh's leaping up almost shoulder high to lick my cheek, nuzzling my hands and my thigh. He gulps down the biscuits I give him. Once more I can tell, but he doesn't bark. Seems to know he's safe only as long as he's quiet. I tie the rope to his collar. Shiloh, boy, we're going for a run, I tell him. To get in and out of Shiloh's pen, I gotta unfasten the piece of wire that holds the fencing against the trunk of the pine, then move the fencing aside long enough to slip out. Shiloh lets me go through first. He follows, and then we're both together, like a 6-legged animal, pounding along up the path, legs bumping. Shiloh leaping up to lick my hand. I let go of the rope and let Shiloh run free for a while. If he goes ahead, even a few steps, he stops and looks back to see if I'm coming. If he stops to sniff at a tree or a bush, and I go on by, his feet pound double time to catch up. Just out of the woods on the other side of the hill, there's a meadow, and I slump down in the grass to rest. Shiloh's all over me, licking my face sloppy wet. I giggle and roll all over my stomach, covering my head and neck with my arms. Shiloh whines and nudges his nose under my shoulder, working to roll me over. I laugh and turn on my back, pulling Shiloh down onto my chest, and for a while we both lay there, panting, enjoying the sunshine, belonging to each other. "Well, what'd you do today, Marty?" Dad asks as he gets out of the Jeep late that evening. "Oh, I looked for groundhogs up on the hill. I fooled around," I tell him. "Well, how's the can collecting coming?" "Well, I found some a couple days ago." "Well, I saw some bottles in the ditch down near Doc Murphy's," Dad says. "Well, I'll go take a look," I tell him, and I set out with my bag. I had to keep on collecting cans, enough to cover some money for meat and bones from the grocery store down in Friendly. The bigger Shiloh grows, the more he'll eat. When I get back home, supper's on the table, and I slip into my chair just as Dad says the blessing. "Dear Lord, we thank you for the food you provided for our table. Bless it to nourish our bodies good. Amen." Ma picks up the meatloaf and passes it around, and the meal begins. I eat about half my supper, and then I say, "I've been getting this sort of full feeling at dinner, Ma, and I get hungry again before I go to bed." Ma don't even look up. "Well, don't eat so much at dinner then, and eat again before bedtime. Food'll be all gone by then." "Well, there's always cornflakes or something. But I get hungry for meat and potatoes later." "Well, save some back then." "Daryl Lynn'll eat it." "For goodness sakes, Marty," says Ma. "Who wants cold meatloaf?" Daryl Lynn says. Forks continue clinking on the table. Becky keeps on digging her fork into her boiled potato. No one looks up. No one pauses. No one even questions. Easy as falling off a log. I get up from the table finally and put some of my meatloaf and half a potato on a saucer. "I'm putting this in the fridge, Daryl Lynn," I say. "Don't you go picking at it." "I won't, I told you," she says. I go into the other room and I sit down on the sofa. So far, so good. "You seem restless, Marty," Ma calls. "Me? Pfft, no, I got lots to do." "Well, where's David Howard this summer? Haven't seen him around." "Well, I think he went to Tennessee to visit his uncle." "Fred? Michael?" "Well, I haven't seen Fred. Michael's gone to some kind of camp." "You're not lonely?" "Well, how can I be lonely with the whole outdoors to play in?" I answer. "Oh, I wish they'd get off my back." "Well, you can ride along to work with me again anytime you want," says Dad. I pick up the comic book I bought a few weeks back. "Well, I want to go. I'll let you know," I tell him. Gradually, the kitchen clatter dies down. Dad belches and goes out on the back porch to look at the sky, same as he always does. Becky's fooling with her food, and Ma sends her away from the table. Daryl Lynn giggles at Becky and gets asked to clear the dishes. I wait until everyone is out of the kitchen and sitting around on the back porch to catch the breeze. As usual, Becky and Daryl Lynn whoop and tumble around in the grass, glad for an audience, and after I sit a respectable amount of time, I say, "I think I'll take my .22 and go up the far hill for a while." "Well, what do you figure out shooting this time of evening?" Dad asks. "I'm just working on my aim," I tell him, "see how good I can hit when the lights dim." "Don't you ever, never aim your gun towards this house or yard," Ma says. Well, I'll point it dead away, I promise. I go back inside for my gun. I slip the leftover food from my little saucer into a plastic sack and set up off the hill. The sounds of my sister's shouts and giggles behind me. Again, as I near the pen, I hear soft, happy yips, but as soon as I say, "shh," the noise stops. The only sound you can hear is the swishing of Shiloh's tail hitting the fence, the soft pat of his paws as he leaps up in the air in sheer, pure happiness. The sloppy slap of his jaws together as he gobbles down the supper I've brought him, and he commences to slobber love all over me as well. I unhook the wire, push the fence open, and lead Shiloh to the stream for a drink, filling the pie pan with fresh water. When I lead him back to the pen again, I can tell he's disappointed. He wanted to go for a run, but I give him enough hugging and squeezing and petting to last the night, with the promise of another run through the meadow the next day. I'm halfway down the hill when I remember I haven't fired my gun once. I wonder if Dad'll say anything. By the time I reach the back porch, though, the whole family's facing down the driveway, 'cause the sound of a truck motor growing louder and louder. I stop in my tracks, finger tightening around my gun. Dad, sitting on the edge of the porch, leans forward so he can see. "Oh, it looks like Judd Travers' pickup," he says. My chest feels tight, like I'm having trouble breathing. The truck pulls up on the other side of the house, and the door swings open. "Well, evening," Dad calls out to Judd, wearing his old Western-style boots with a sharp heel. He gets out and he comes over. Evening, he said. You had dinner? Ma asked. I got some leftovers I could heat up real quick. I had me some ribs already, he says. Ain't looking for a meal, Miss Preston, just looking for a dog. He sure don't waste any time getting to the point. Now my heart's really pounding. That new dog of yours run off again? Dad asks him. I swear if I find him this time, I'm going to break his legs, Judd says and spits. Oh, come on, Judd. A dog with 4 broke legs ain't no dog to you at all. He's no dog to me at all the way he keeps running off. It's the 4th time he's left the pack when I had him out hunting. I got to teach him a lesson. Whoop him good and starve him lean. Wonder if you'd seen him. Well, I sure didn't see him on my route today, and you know if I had, I'd have put him in the Jeep and brought him home to you straight away, says Dad. What about that boy of yours? Think he's seen him? Dad had heard me coming from back on the hill, and he turns around. Marty? I stand rooted to the ground at the side of the house. Huh? Come on around here. Judd's dog's missing again, and he wants to know if you've seen him. His dog? Here in this yard? I haven't seen any dog in this yard all day, I say, coming a few steps closer. Judd is studying me hard, and so is Dad. Well, how about when you went out looking for bottles? Dad asked. You seen him then? Nope. My voice is stronger now. Saw that big German shepherd of Baker's that gets loose sometimes, and saw a little old gray dog, but sure didn't see that beagle. Well, you keep an eye out sharp, Judd says, and if you see him, you throw a rope around him and drag him over. Here? I only look at him. I can't speak, can't even nod my head. I would never promise him that. Did you hear what he asked you, Marty? Says Dad. I nodded my head. Yes, I heard all right. Okay then, Judd said, and he gets back in his truck. Have any luck hunting yesterday? Dad calls out after him. A rabbit, and I saw a groundhog, but didn't get it. That new dog hadn't run off, he probably would have got it for me. He wasn't such a good hunting dog, I would have shot him by now. Well, Sheriff would get on to you if you did something like that, Judd. Well, Law never told me before what I could do with my dogs, and he won't be telling me now, Judd says. He laughs, waves his hand, starts the engine, and the pickup pulls away. Eek, Marty almost got himself in a scary situation there. Okay, so we will read chapter 6 and chapter 7 tomorrow, and I'm going to work on some questions that we can answer. Remember, it's not required, it's just so we can talk back and forth. Okay, so, and tomorrow we'll listen on our couches as a fun, different place to listen. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.